played a lot of sports in your life. At what point does it get toward you start to think about, oh, well, I could really do something in that all-time category? It would be very hard as a player. I mean, Adrian Peterson has the record at 296 rushing yards in a game. Derrick Henry, he had 235, I believe. There was still time if he ripped off another big chunks, and then, 300's in the frame now. I would struggle very hard just as a competitor not to want to do something so special. But here's the thing. At what point does it become stat grabbing versus, hey, it's okay, you really have a chance to do something once in a lifetime? Where is that line, and where does it become okay? We've talked about that in the past with Russell Westbrook chasing a triple-double record or other guys chasing different things. And, you kind of sit and wonder, okay, at what point does it become okay to do that? Was there any point in this game, maybe after the 99-yard rush, where you thought, okay, Henry might have a chance to do something huge here, and is that okay with you?
Well, I'll be honest, the biggest problem that I had, I like the unselfishness. We saw Todd Gurley do that this year where he had a chance for an easy score and he took the knee or he slid down so that they could just close the game out. And part of that is you don't want to run the risk of not only freakish things happening, but you also put players out there and get them a chance to be hurt. I know in the moment he's trying to be unselfish, but you're putting Dion Lewis, a 5'8" back that's under 200 pounds. That's a key component in your team that you're going to need here for the next 3 weeks. And you put him in goal line situations where he's just going to get creamed, where Jacksonville's D-line, they're not in a good mood anyways. If they know the run is coming, they're keying on that. And you take a chance on getting a key player on your team hurt because you put him in a situation that you, as the bigger back, the 6'4", 250-pound back, you should be in there on those goal line situations. So that's the one problem I had that he probably wasn't even thinking about, because those guys all have coaches and stuff in their ears that are telling them stuff. Other players know things. They hear stuff that's being put out there. They know their franchise records for touchdowns and things like that in a game. So I think at that point, yeah, he's being unselfish, but you also do have to look forward of what's best for the team. And I think putting Dion Lewis in a situation that's not his forte, running the ball in goal-to-go situations, that was my only takeaway. But in terms of looking at stats, I think if it's a close game, if it's not a blowout, then I think in the flow of the game, if you get it, that's where stats really mean something. But if it is a blowout situation and you're just running up the score, maybe not. But at that point in that game, you're playing a divisional opponent. It's not like you're up 40-0. It's not that type of a bad score. You're at home. And frankly, Derrick Henry has had a god-awful year when you look at his numbers. I mean, here's his rushing numbers since week 1. 26, 56, 57, 24, 56, 21, 33, 27, 58, 46, 30, and 40. I don't know that Derrick Henry has had the performance and the cachet to just be like, no, I'm okay. I'm not going to go in there. I want to be unselfish. Look, there's been other people that are had to carry you a lot of the year. You had one night where you could have carried everybody else. I just think at that point when you're at home, you're in front of the crowd, you want to give them something to remember. It's not been that pretty of a football game, but you've been the story. And you have a chance to do that. I don't think it would have been selfish at all for him to go in there and just do his job and take care of business. I don't think that would have been stat grabbing at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you made a good point about the injury. To be honest, I didn't even think about that as far as Dion Lewis being so much smaller and having a goal-to-go situation and the risks that they took as Titans to allow that to happen. That's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that. Not to mention the fact that if Derrick Henry had 3 attempts from the goal line, I would think that he would probably have cashed that in on his 5th touchdown run. I mean, to put your name in the record books with 5, that's pretty hard to beat. The 296 by Adrian Peterson, I just don't know if that's ever going to be beat. I know we always say, well, I don't know if that's ever going to be beaten, and then someone does, but that's a heck of a lot of yards. And when you rush for 99 in one clip, you still have 197 yards to go before you get to that mark. And
yeah,
there's not a lot of guys who have 197 yards in one game ever in their career.
We saw Adrian Peterson have a 90-yard run last Monday night, and he didn't even break 100 for the game.
Yeah. So I just think that once you got over 200, you got to 235, and I'm just saying it would be hard for me because that's so rare. it would be hard for me as a man, as an athlete, as a competitor to not want to chase that 296. I'm just saying.
No, I tend to agree with you. It would have been tough to be that close, especially to a franchise record, and have that moment of unselfishness. So it probably does speak a lot about Derrick Henry. And again, when I talk about Deion Lewis, I don't think that Derrick Henry has that thought going to his head. That's sort of what we get to do and play hindsight. But during the game, when I was sitting there watching it, I was thinking like, oh my God, what if Deion Lewis actually got hurt in this moment? How bad would Derrick Henry feel, and how pissed would Mike Vrabel be? Well, speaking of pissed off, Twitter is, because the Washington Redskins didn't sign Colin Kaepernick. Did they make the right move? Eric and I will discuss that in segment 2, along with Kyler Murray. Should he just forego the NFL and jump right into baseball? Is that the best career move for him? The NBA, we got to talk about the Houston Rockets. They are a struggling mess right now. They are in the bottom of the Western Conference. Is there a chance a 65-win team from the year before could actually miss the playoffs? And Eric touched on in the teaser, the NBA ratings are down for TNT and ESPN this year. Is this a LeBron problem, or is this fallout from the Warriors' dominance? We'll discuss that when we come back. It's segment 2, so you know it's talk-worthy time, and let's jump right into the topic that's always bubbling under the surface every time we see a starting quarterback go down. The Twitterverse picks up the pace on the Colin Kaepernick talk, and it's at a boiling point right now with what is happening in Washington. As everyone who's a listener that follows the NFL probably knows, Alex Smith suffered a gruesome leg injury. Colt McCoy suffers a fracture in his lower leg. And the Redskins had signed Mark Sanchez, yes, that Mark Sanchez, to come in as the backup quarterback, probably hoping he would never see the field. But that's exactly what has happened. He fell apart on Sunday, and Washington had signed Josh Johnson. Yes, that Josh Johnson from the Tampa days and a few other teams and leagues. But he came in and didn't look half bad. But anytime a quarterback goes down and a backup comes in or a backup is signed, Twitter goes crazy with talk of why teams didn't sign Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is better than this. He's better than 10 of the starters in the NFL, and no one will give him a chance. Washington should have. Jay Gruden discussed this topic at his press conference last week, where he said the Redskins actually entertained the thought of signing Kaepernick, but with his style, they were afraid that it would be too much to try to put him into and change their whole system around. So, Eric, let me ask you the question that Twitter is asking. Should the Washington Redskins have made a call to Colin Kaepernick?
No, I really don't. I mean, it goes back to the same thing we've argued for about a year now. The fact is that Colin Kaepernick was regressing significantly in his days with the 49ers. He was having major problems completing passes, not throwing interceptions. He just doesn't look good when he's out on the field. He looks very confused. His rating in 2015 was 78.5, which was down for the 4th consecutive year since 2012 when it reached its peak at 98.3. So those people that want to talk about Kaepernick this and Kaepernick that, he had 21 fumbles in his career. He had 30 interceptions in his career. His touchdown percentage was quite low, and his QBR just kept dipping every year. How are you going to take a guy like that and throw him back in as some sort of savior in the league, other than the fact that it's just a social platform? So no, do I think Mark Sanchez is a great quarterback? Absolutely not. They put him in, and Mark Sanchez did Mark Sanchez things. But guess what? If they put Kaepernick in, just like when RG3 is in sort of its spells for the Ravens, they do Kaepernick and RG3 things. Okay, so no, I don't think that they should have called him. I do think they're in a bad situation in Washington with their quarterback scenario. They've now lost 4 in a row. Their season is over. They've lost that division when they did have a 2-game lead earlier in the year. Got to figure this out in the offseason, because bringing him in now for the remaining couple weeks of the year does nothing.
Well, I'll tell you who they shouldn't have called. They shouldn't have called Sanchez. They could have probably called literally anyone else and gotten a better performance than what they did. We were talking about a little bit pre-show that Sanchez is a guy you probably want on your roster in your locker room and hope that he never sees the field, that he can just help prep and get the starter ready, help with scout team stuff, help with film breakdown, but you just don't want him out there playing for you. At some point, Eric, I kind of just want Kaepernick to get signed because I want to see him on the field and I want to see what he looks like. Because if he goes back and he plays like the quarterback that he did the last 19 games that he played, where he had 3 wins over that time and 16 losses, sometimes I wonder, Eric, if he even wants to play. Because I feel like if he came back into the league and he played and he was awful, that he would lose his platform, that people would just stop listening. He's become sort of a cult hero. He's become this pop culture icon now for what he did. And the liberal basically side of the media and what Twitter normally runs into, that's all that they see. They don't see a guy that struggled the way he did, a guy that couldn't beat out Blaine Gabbert at certain points in San Francisco, the guy that Tennessee fans pray never sees the field for them now. He couldn't beat that guy out in San Francisco. So people revert back to what they saw from him back in the Harbaugh days, back when nobody had seen what he was able to do. And once that got put on film and teams were able to use the rules to say, okay, if you want to stuff the ball in the belly, then we're just going to attack you then because you're a runner at that point. And they basically shut him down. He couldn't read progressions and he was a one read and run guy, and teams would just spy, take his first read away, and he struggled. So sure, bring him back into the league. Please do, because I'm sick of this topic coming up. I'm sick of listening to other media people who've never played quarterback sit there and want to run other guys down because they take a job. Do you think it's Tom Savage's part that a team signs him? Or it's Mark Sanchez's fault that a team signs him? They reach out. They want those guys to come in for certain reasons. Sometimes it's not even necessarily the play. It's you want to bring a veteran guy in to help your backup quarterback who's going to be seeing more snaps while the starter's down. So this whole notion of running other people down to build up Kaepernick just shows that they don't remember what 2016 and even the end of 2015 was like for Kaepernick when he just struggled. So at some point, Eric, I'd love to see him get out there, but you know what it's going to be. If he gets out there, it'll be, well, he's rusty. If the NFL would have given him a shot, he'd play better. If a team ran an offense around him, he'd play better. It's just going to be a bunch of excuses. So part of the reason is, Eric, I don't even know if Kaepernick wants to play. Maybe the Redskins did offer him something and it's not enough money. It's not the position that he wants to be in. And maybe he knows if he goes back to the league, he loses his platform if he doesn't perform the way everyone thinks he's going to perform.
Yeah, you're right. It would be a tremendous amount of pressure on him. And he didn't perform well with pressure from basically 2014 on. So you put a whole different kind of pressure on him. You're right. It's a tremendous amount of risk because if he goes back in there and then he's terrible the way that a lot of pundits think he will be, then you're right. He loses that ability to have that cult following because, oh, now all of a sudden it's proven that you're not a good quarterback. And therefore, all of the teams that didn't hire you are justified, which is exactly what you don't want them to be if you're Colin Kaepernick. You don't want them to be justified in their position for not bringing you back for, oh, guess what? Football reasons, the reasons that we run the business, the reasons that we've decided you're not worth the risk in our locker room. And quite frankly, your play on the field isn't worth the fiasco. If he proves them right, he loses everything.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. The league has just changed to the point that really bleeds right into our next topic, which is talking about the Heisman Trophy winner. And if you listened to the show last week, we said that Kyler Murray should win it. And he's basically taken that sort of Kaepernick-like quarterback and just taken it to the next level. A guy that's not only fast and can get out of the pocket and kill you with his legs, but he can throw the ball down the field too. He is not just a one progression guy. He can run that spread system. He can work through his progressions and he can light you up in the pass game. And that's one thing that Kaepernick just simply couldn't do. And when you look at the way the NFL has changed, it seems like Kyler Murray would be a great fit. So, Eric, I'll get to that question next. But first of all, did the Heisman go to the right player on Saturday night?
Well, sure. It would be hard for us on this show to argue that it didn't after we made the case that Kyler Murray should be fairly looked at when last week we titled our episode Jalen Hurts the Heisman, because it felt like with Jalen Hurts coming in, taking care of business for Alabama, bringing them back to beat Georgia, that kind of proved that although Tua is a great kid, he earned a lot of statistical accomplishments in this year at Alabama, that team is just quite frankly so strong that you might be able to put Mark Sanchez in at quarterback for Alabama and still have them win football games. So I think that hurt Tua. And then you look at Haskins had good stats, Murray had good stats. But of the two players, Murray just fit what they wanted for the Heisman Award a little bit more than Haskins. And so I'm totally fine with Murray taking home that accomplishment. He has a big decision to make, though, now. As you brought up, I mean, does he play in the NFL? At this point, we're not really sure. It's going to be a decision where he needs to decide, do I want to make a lot of bank really quickly for a career that might be a few years long, or Do I want to have a career in Major League Baseball that might not pay me as much as what the NFL can, but maybe my career is longer? I'd say on one hand, I don't envy his position, but on the other hand, it sure would be a good problem to have to be that good at that many things in the world of sports.
Yeah, the next question that you sort of think about is, well, what's the best career move